Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to talk about some of the brand new perennials coming out this year in 2022. We recently talked about some of the new annuals coming out, and I just love doing this type of video because it makes me so excited about spring and planting. I mean, I'm still looking out at a snow floor. I know many of you are as well. So every time we do something like this, my plant list, it grows, it gets longer. We have 22 perennials to talk about today, a few of which I've had a chance to plant. I got my hands on them early last season, so they're in the ground. This will be their second growing season, so we'll be able to see a little bit more of what they can do, but they're all really pretty. Let's just jump right in. First one is a new Summarific Hibiscus called Edge of Night. The contrast factor of this plant alone makes it really interesting. So they've got the dark black leaves. The buds, even before the flowers open, are bright green. So they really, show up on the plant beautifully. And then once they open, bright pink 7 to 8 inch diameter blooms with dark pink striping, and they're really full. So it's really different from the older varieties of hibiscus. I remember, and I might have a picture, I'll look, I'm not sure. When Aaron and I first got married, one of the first things I planted was one of the older varieties of red hibiscus, and I put it in a container, kind of a taller container, and it was just like kind of sparse. The leaves dropped all the time. These newer varieties of hibiscus I would put in a container any day as a specimen kind of centerpiece plant because they are so full and so dense and they provide so much color. We put ours out in the new south garden. We have a big grass walkway, and at the end of the swoop we planted a little hedge of limelight prime hydrangeas. So you've got the green leaves, the whitish blooms that age pink, and then right at the end of that hedge you've got this Edge of Night hibiscus. So the contrast of the two things is beautiful. They provide such a beautiful weight in the garden. And this variety is a little bit more compact or small than the other Summarific hibiscus. They grow about 3.5 feet tall, 4.5 feet wide. Still a good sized perennial. I mean, you would almost look at it and think it's like a small to medium sized shrub. But the difference is these come back fresh from the ground every year. So we wait until late winter, early spring to cut them back to about 6 inches above the ground, and then we wait. And they're one of the last things to break dormancy in the spring. In fact, a lot of times, especially if you're new to hibiscus, you'll think they're dead. But come May or so, when everything else is like budded and growing and blooming, then you'll start to see the growth on your hibiscus. But once they start to grow, it's kind of crazy. Like, you almost want to put a ruler out there so that you can track their growth progress because they grow so fast. So they're full size, fresh every single year. They're a zone 4 through 9, which is incredible. Very winter hardy, while their blooms make them look like they belong in a tropical garden. And they also can tolerate boggy areas. So if you've got a very sunny spot, they do prefer full sun, but if you've got a sunny spot that's a low area that kind of collects water, perfect plant for that situation. The next one is a hardy geranium, also known as a cranesbill, called Boom Chocolata. I love this one. I have some behind our chicken coop, and I've got a lot of green-leaved things back there. Baptisia, iris, pincushion flower, veronica, foxglove. I needed something with depth of color. So the leaves on this one, even when it's not in bloom, which beautiful purple blooms, the leaves are kind of bolder and they're a dark bronze green. Really beautiful, that provide that depth and dimension in that flower bed, which was really needed. They do get quite tall though, so 26 inches. I want to say mine maybe got a little taller than that, 30 inches wide. So there are other varieties of geraniums though. So if you wanted something next to the edge of a border, you could choose something that stays a little bit shorter. I kind of put mine right up against our pallet walkway, and I love the look of it. They are a zone 4 through 8. Pollinators love them, and they're easy to maintain. One shear back in the summer, so you want to treat them kind of like a salvia, in that they'll come out with their first flush of bloom early in the summer. You can cut them back, and that will encourage new growth and new blooms. However, some years I don't get to it. Some years I don't cut my geraniums back and they do just fine. The new blooms kind of cover over the other ones that were left from earlier on, and I love that. I love it. If I don't quite get to it, it's not going to look mangy and bad for the rest of the year. The next one is an Amsonia called String Theory, which provide the most beautiful soft periwinkle blue blooms late spring through early summer. So they come up on stalks and have clusters of blooms at the top of each stalk, and each bloom is in the shape of a star. I think the common name of this plant is blue star, which is very appropriate. But the leaves on this one are really interesting as well. They're more fine, more thread-like, as opposed to the other variety we have talked about before and I've shown in my garden called Storm Cloud. That one has more bold leaves. So this one has more of a wispy, ethereal kind of cloud-like look. Looks beautiful, beautiful structure through the summer, even after they're done blooming. But the fall color is it's insane. That's when we planted ours last year. So I actually didn't get to see mine blooming. We'll hopefully see that this spring. But when we planted them, they were in their beautiful bright kind of gold orange fall color. I loved it. So this one stays a bit more compact than Storm Cloud, 22 inches tall, 36 inches wide, and kind of this broad vase shape, zone 4 through 9. The next 3 are varieties of sedum. Sedum do really well for us here in high desert. They like full sun. They don't want a lot of care. They don't want to be fertilized. They don't need a lot of water. They're just overall a wonderful plant. Also, no matter what variety of sedum you plant, you will have pollinators all over them, and they look great almost the entire year, even if you get snow in the winter. So what happens, like in the spring when they push new growth, you'll see these beautiful rosettes coming out of the ground. They almost look like a tender succulent, like an Echeveria or Sempervivum, which is not tender, but anyway, it has that kind of rosette structure. Then they just keep growing and you don't have to do a thing to them. They form their buds and their blooms midsummer. Then they just start to be in their beautiful color for the rest of the year, usually starting when it's really hot. And then I leave mine through the winter because typically they have strong enough stems to stay upright. They take a frost and look beautiful. They provide some forage for wildlife. And it's not until late winter, early spring, that's when we cut them back. So we've just got this few week window before they start pushing new growth where you don't really see them. But other than that, they're providing something for the garden. The first one is Back in Black. I planted this one in our west side garden along a brick walkway with some pink profusion salvia in front of it. The contrast of the two plants was absolutely beautiful. The Back in Black grows about 2 feet tall and 30 inches wide. So I did space them out, I think with enough space for them to get to their full size. It would remind you of maybe the older variety that you might be familiar with called Maestro. I planted some of those behind our gazebo when we still had the gazebo. A little bit different color in bloom, like Maestro had more pinkish blooms. This one, Back in Black, has, they call it a garnet red bloom. So when they open, the middle of the bloom is that red color, but then the outer kind of petals, I don't know if they're actually petals, but they're cream colored. So when you're standing back, it gives it an overall appearance of being pink. So I really like it. But Maestro tended to want to flop for me no matter what I did. It was getting full sun. I adjusted water, you know, to where it wasn't getting a lot of water. We didn't fertilize, and it still kind of did the flopping thing. Back in Black is resistant to that. It maintains its upright structure throughout the season and resists flopping over, which I appreciate greatly. They're also a zone 3 through 9, so very winter hardy, great for cold climates. The next one is Coral Jade, and if the word coral is in the name of a flower, just go ahead and sign me up. I'm gonna want to plant it. Anything coral or salmon pink, I love that color palette. And this one grows a lot like Lemon Jade, which I have in my garden and have for years, and I absolutely love it. This one grows about 18 inches tall, 30 inches wide, so sizable perennial. It would remind you in bloom color of the Autumn Joy, which is kind of an industry standard. A lot of you will know what that one looks like. I have some in my garden. This one is a little bit deeper in color and it doesn't flop. My Autumn Joy flops every single year no matter what I do. I really should be staking mine, but I don't really want to have a bunch of things that I have to stake in my garden. So if I can get the same color out of a different variety of plant, same structure, same flower color, I'm gonna opt for that one. I planted some of these alongside some Serendipity alliums. Benjamin helped me, I remember. Serendipity alliums, some Supreme Cantaloupe Echinacea, and then some of these. I think it's gonna be a really pretty little grouping right there. It's also a zone 3 through 9, just like the last variety of sedum here that I don't have in our garden yet. It's called Tiramisu. This one has a very different look. It looks more delicate, like the leaf structure, the leaves aren't as big. It has more of a dome, kind of full rounded appearance, and it looks like a dark colored sedum and a green colored sedum kind of put together in leaf color, kind of a purpley green, very soft, and the buds are a soft pink and they open up cream. It grows upwards of 20 inches tall and 32 inches wide, which is quite large, and it's also resistant to flopping, so it should keep its nice structure through the season. The next two are varieties of phlox. The first is a tall garden phlox called Luminary Backlight. Beautiful, bright, creamy white flowers with that strong upright structure. Gets about 30 inches tall by 2 feet wide. I have these in containers ready to go out in our garden this next spring, but I don't have any currently planted. I do have the opalescence variety. It's kind of in the same line. The good thing about these phlox is that they're highly resistant to mildew, because in the past, some of the old traditional varieties, the one that looks most like this to me is the David White, but they've dealt with such, or they've had such bad mildew problems throughout the years, especially for those of you in areas with high humidity or, you know, more of a wet climate, that I know a lot of people shy away from them. I mean, even here in our dry, high desert climate, we can deal with mildew on phlox. So to have one that's resistant and still give you those bright white clusters of flowers is really fun. They are a zone 3 through 8 and their leaves are very dark colored. So if you see them in contrast to that bright bloom color, it's a really pretty blend. The next phlox is Opening Act Romance. Rich lavender flowers with a white halo, more of a domed kind of rounded appearance as opposed to like the luminary backlight has that really strong upright sort of structure. And the Opening Act Romance blooms pretty much the whole season. So they start early summer and they just keep on going. They're a zone 4 through 8 that grow about 22 inches tall, 3 feet wide. Also highly resistant to mildew. There are several others in the Opening Act series. I'm trying to remember all of them, but I know there's an ultra pink, which is super bright pink, super vibrant. This one I think is one step down in vibrancy. It's got more of like a soft, rich color. Then there's blush, which is a light pink. There's Pinkadot, which is kind of a bicolor pink, and white. The next one is a new bush clematis called Stand By Me Lavender. It matches the growth habit, performance, flower size, all of that of the regular Stand By Me clematis. It's just a different color, which I'm excited for because the Stand By Me clematis, the blue variety, has done so well for us in our area. It's planted in full sun. They get about 38 inches tall, so they do benefit from a little bit of support. If you plant them all together, they'll kind of support each other a little bit, but I think you almost need like a peony ring sort of situation, and I miss my window every single year. I need to like go out there before they even break dormancy and get some things in place because they would grow a little bit better if they had a little bit of extra support. They are a zone 3 through 7. Their flowers are about 3 inches or so in diameter, and they always seem to be in some sort of bloom stage. There's always color on them. Even the faded blooms have a really neat, like their spent flowers are like seed heads are gorgeous. The next one is a heuchera called Dressed Up Evening Gown. So this one has huge black ruffly leaves. It looks kind of like a black pearl, but the leaves are more ruffled, almost like cherry truffles. So it's kind of got the cherry truffles growth habit, but in that dark black color. It's so beautiful, and it can take sun or shade. Grows 14 inches tall, 24 inches wide, zone 4 through 9. I can imagine a lot of different areas to use this heuchera in our garden, both in containers and in the landscape. Next, we have 2 new varieties of hosta. The first one is Hope Springs Eternal, and this is another big one. So this one has big blue leaves with creamy white, almost like the softest yellow of margins. They're kind of ruffly. They grow about 22 inches tall, almost 4 feet wide. That's a big hosta. They do send up a bloom stalk about midsummer. The bloom is white. I usually cut the bloom stalks off my hostas because I don't really love, it's kind of like when coleus bloom, I like to deadhead the blooms off. I don't really want the coleus to have the blooms on them. I like to just have them for their leaf structure and canopy. Same with hostas. There are some hosta blooms that smell really good though, and typically like with new ones, when I get them in the ground, I will let them bloom so I can see if they smell good, and if they do, I will leave them because I like the scent they add to the air, and they usually attract hummingbirds as well. This is a zone 3 through 9. I'm actually excited for the bloom stalk on this next variety of hosta. It's called Miss America, and it grows about 19 inches tall, 55 inches wide, green with white variegation, but the bloom stalks that it sends up, the flowers are lavender and they're outward facing instead of kind of being, usually the hosta blooms look a little bit kind of messy and they're a little bit downturned. You really can't see the bloom structure. But with this one, I'm excited to see how these look because I think the outward facing blooms might be a little bit of a game changer for me. The next 3 are varieties of Shasta Daisy. The first one is called Banana Cream 2, which is an improvement from the old Banana Cream. I planted some of these out in my parents' garden last summer, and I'm so excited to see what they do this year. My mom commented on them quite a number of times last year, just telling me how much she enjoyed them. She loved the color. They always seem to be in bloom. So it's fun to plant things other than just in our own space, just to see how they do around our own valley. And I love the color, you know, that soft yellow, the banana cream color. I think it's a perfect name for that plant. But the Banana Cream 2, in terms of how it's been improved, it has a tighter growth habit now. It has better flower coverage, so more flowers per plant, and they bloom quite a bit earlier. And also for those of you who live in more mild climates or areas with very short winters, they will still bloom for you. They don't need a tremendously long cold period in order to perform like some other perennials do. Their flowers are huge too for a daisy, like 3.5-inch flowers. They grow about 2 feet tall, almost 2 feet wide, and they are a zone 5 through 9. The next 2 I also don't have planted out in our own garden, but I do have them in containers ready to plant out this spring. The first one is called Marshmallow. fully double white flowers, 3.5 inch in diameter, and they hold really nicely. I had these long enough last season to actually have them bloom in our greenhouse, so I got to experience what their blooms look like. And I can really tell a lot from a plant, you know, coming from a garden center background and now, you know, taking care of plants here in containers, I can tell if a plant is really going to be a good one, a good performer, based on how it does in a container, because plants don't love to be in containers for very long, especially nursery containers. You know, you're usually pushing it in terms of, you know, how long, how much of a root reservoir they have and all that sort of thing. And sometimes the water can be a little erratic if they're not on drip. And so if a plant performs really well for you in a container all season long in a greenhouse when it's 100+ degrees, you know it's going to do well out in your landscape. And these held so beautifully for us. The plant itself grows about 20 inches tall, 22 inches wide, and it is also a zone 5 through 9. I love double flowers. I'm so excited for this one. And the last variety of daisy is Spun Silk, which is a spider type daisy. It has fringed petals, huge blooms, 4.5 inch in diameter, maybe a little bit bigger. I'll have to look back. I think I took a picture of one in the greenhouse when it started to bloom up next to my hand just to show scale, how big that flower was. It was so incredibly, well, the texture of it's beautiful, but so incredibly huge. I was really excited about the potential of that one out in the garden. It grows 24 inches tall, 22 inches wide, and is also a zone 5 through 9. One note that I did notice on the website when I initially was learning about this plant is that they do recommend in really warm climates to provide a little bit of shade in the afternoon. So that's something that I will probably be mindful of when I get ready to place the Spun Silk. I will probably put it in an area that gets a good block of morning sun, but then gets maybe dappled light or shade in the afternoon, just to protect those blooms and keep them looking really nice and fresh. The next 5 are all varieties of Monarda, or bee balm is the common name. They're part of the mint family, and as a whole, they're an amazing group of perennials. They attract all the pollinators, bees, hummingbirds, butterflies. They're resistant to deer. They have a very pleasant smell to me. Do you have those things that when you smell them, it takes you straight back to a specific time in your life? For me, it's my childhood in the spring, right about the time when the sun was warming up the stones in our pathways or the concrete walkways, and I could feel the warmth on my bare feet. I never wore shoes when I was a kid. And so I'd run through the garden, and I remember like that turning point in the spring when things started to feel really warm in the morning, and the heat would warm up plants, and I could smell some of those smells. I don't know how to explain it, but it's one of those plants that does it for me. They're a wonderful plant. They're all a zone 4 through 8. I'm going to run through these fairly quickly because there's not a ton different about each one of these. So the first one is Leading Lady Amethyst. So you can see the color there, that just beautiful bicolor kind of pink. It's a little bit more light on the edges of the petals, deeper in the throat. That one grows upwards of 14 inches tall, 28 inches wide. The next one is Leading Lady Pink. So this one is vibrant, and you can see kind of the spots on the petals there. Grows 14 inches tall, 28 inches wide as well. Then there's Leading Lady Raspberry. These are vibrant. Look at that. The green looks vibrant, the pink looks vibrant, and this one's almost opposite in that the outer petals look really bright and the interior, like the throat of the bloom, looks a little bit more light in color. Also 14 inches tall by 28 inches wide. The next one is Pardon My Lavender 2. So this one grows just a tiny bit taller, 18 inches tall, so just 4 inches taller, 28 inch spread as well. This one has a really beautiful, like so far I think this is my favorite color. It's got kind of that, is it like orchid pink, like lavender pink kind of color? Really pretty and really clear colors. The last one is Pardon My Rose. So if we look in close at this one, hot pink petals, I mean, that's the obvious there, and then the white striping and the tips of the petals. But if you look right beneath all the petals at the bracts, so that's what holds the petals in, they are really beautifully colored, kind of a dark pink color. So even when those petals, the actual flower petals, dry up and fall off, that plant's still gonna look like it's still in bloom. I love it when plants have that. It just extends the season of interest on your plant. The next one is an ornamental grass called Lemon Squeeze. It's a type of pennisetum or fountain grass, but hardy in zones 5 through 9, grows 3.5 feet tall by 4.5 feet wide, but the flowers, Oh, they're so pretty. So it's a gold-leaved pennisetum, lighter colored green or kind of on the gold side of things. They've never observed any burn in evaluating this variety. There's never been burn on the leaves, which is wonderful. You always worry about that with gold-leaved varieties of things. It's something that they really watch out for, but this one seems to hold up really well. But the flowers come out creamy white in the middle of the season, and then they age when the seed heads start to form after the flowers. They're a copper color. Amazing fall winter interest. I would leave these up through the whole season, cut them back in the late winter, early spring before new growth emerges, but I'm excited to get some of those. A big bank of those somewhere would be beautiful. And the last perennial is Buried Treasure Pink Strawberries. I've had really good luck with the Buried Treasure line as a whole. There's Buried Treasure Red, White, and Pink, fully double flowers. They bloom at the same time as they're producing fruit. They're ever-bearing, so they're always producing fruit throughout the whole season. I have noticed, because I've grown these for several years now, that they produce more and larger fruit the second year. Could just be me, I don't know, but they seem to, like, once they've rooted in and gotten used to their spot, they seem to be happier. They do term them a snack size berry, and I do think that that is a good description, but they are quite a bit bigger the second year for me. And the flavor was better the second year for me too, which could be watering or weather related, who knows. They grow 16 inches tall, a couple feet wide. They are a zone 4 through 8. Pollinators, of course, love them, and I like to tuck them all over the place. I have them in containers, raised beds. I have them in our blueberry containers. I've put them in just flower containers, just as a flower exit, because they're always in some sort of flower, and then they produce these beautiful berries that kind of spill over the edge. They're just a really versatile plant. And that's it for today's video. Those are the 22 perennials for this year, ones to be watching out for. You should start seeing them show up at your garden centers come spring. Do talk to somebody at your garden center though, if there's something that really interests you. I remember that from the garden center, I always loved to hear from people, because then it let us know what to be watching out for, what to be looking out for, and what we should be ordering. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you're having a great day, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.